Hello, welcome back to Countdown to Restoration, the show that is counting down the days of the Biden regime, the evil, dark Biden regime. This is episode 97. Glad that you're part of it. Sorry yesterday's was uploaded so late, but sometimes Rumble doesn't process very quickly, and it just stops everything. So we hope today we will get things in a little quicker as we go through some dark, harrowing times of the thief in chief. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the thief in chief. The thief in chief. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Bye. Have a good day. Got to get moving. The thief in chief is making our life darker and scarier every day. Today's a bad day. Today is a bad day of evil tidings. But not in this regard. It is the Army's birthday. Actually, it was yesterday. Yay! Happy birthday, Army! Go Army! Yeah, Army strong. Well, it used to be, not now. Anyway, didn't have time to get a better Army photo. Sorry about that, but I was in the U.S. Army National Guard, served 6 proud years, and anyway, in a tank. Yes, in armor. Yeah, a lot of fun. Really hot this time of the year. Anyway, the poster child for the dark, evil, distressing Biden regime, Dr. Rachel Levin. Person that shows you can't tell a book by its cover, or can you? Looks pretty much like a man to me. Also, excuse me, why do we continue to show him? Shows just how messed up and how much the Biden regime wants to change society. Shows how messed up they are in their true purposes, as we shall see in a moment, in their lies. But we have this song for the good doc. Much more than a woman. Not only to me, but to everybody. Now we have this. I thought you would find this interesting, distressing, and every other ing that we can think of. Take it away, Joe and Jill. Take it away, Joe and Jill. Come on, Joe and Jill. What is wrong?
Hi, everyone. We want to wish you a happy Pride Month and let you know how proud we are to stand with you this month and every month. For the LGBTQ community, for our nation, and for the world, Pride Month represents so very much.
It stands for defiance in the face of injustice, the legacy of Stonewall, and the fight to ensure that all people be treated with dignity and respect. It's a fight that resonates this year on the 40th anniversary of the HIV/AIDS crisis and the 5th anniversary of the deadly attack at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando.
Pride stands for courage, courage of all those in generations gone by and today who proudly live their truth. It stands for justice, as June marks the anniversary of the Supreme Court decision delivering marriage equality and protecting LGBTQ employees from discrimination. And above all else, Pride Month stands for love.
Make no mistake, we still have a lot of work to do to ensure that everyone enjoys the full promise of equity, dignity, and protection. And that's especially true for trans people and for LGBTQ people of color.
But we're making progress in executive orders and federal laws and representation and in hearts and minds. This administration, our administration, is always going to have your back. And we're going to fight to pass the Equality Act and build a better LGBTQ life for young people.
Thank you for being you. And we hope you have a bright and joyful Pride.
God bless you. God bless you all.
Now, there are many upsetting aspects of that little greeting, which they seem to put more heart into than they have any of the religious greetings, other than those for the Muslim holiday Eid. Hope I'm saying that correctly. I do not want to offend. But many questions come up in this. I'm sure none that Dr. Levin would have. Number one, there's only one truth. Okay? Truth is not your personal property. It's not your behavior. That would be true, being true. It is true that Dr. Rachel Levine dresses like a woman. It's not truth that he is a woman, because he isn't. No one gets to pick that's my truth. No, there's one truth, and it's constant. It never changes. It's always there. We may change what's true. I use this explanation often. It's true right now that you're watching me, but that's not truth, because it won't always be. It's not a constant. Truth is constant. And as far as I know, there's only one truth. With this not being a religious broadcast, I won't mention. Maybe I will. That truth is Jesus Christ. And so all other things, they may be true for a moment, but they're not truth. You can't just pick a truth and live it. It doesn't exist that way. Also, and this is important for later in the show, they talked about the the Stonewall, where the gay nightclub fought back against lawful police orders and the fulfilling of their duty. And they talked about justified uprising. Now that's very important, because they were breaking laws and they were fighting against civil authority and threatening the government. That's very important, but that was justified. Also, the promise of dignity and the promise of equity and dignity. Well, what promise is that? I missed that in the Constitution. I thought it was liberty and justice for all. You know, that's Pledge of Allegiance, isn't it? No, I thought it was, what? The pursuit of happiness? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Not a guarantee of equity, especially for trans people, LGBTQ trans people of color. So that sounds not like the USA. Equity, that means extra treatment, extra equality, if you will, which means we don't have equality. If you have equity, you don't have equality. You can't have both. So, happy Pride indeed. You know, if you are gay, LGBTQIA, I've got to find out what the A is. I don't know. Plus, I hope you have a good life. I mean no ill towards you. It's just, we can't shape society for you. You have to find a way to fit into what is there. It's not fair to reshape everything, because you're not the dominant culture. I think you should be able to get a job, unless you are more about your sexuality than you are doing the job, and you know. But I think there's limits to this. I think there's limits. You know, we've just gone too far, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to start pulling it back, but I don't know how we're going to, because if you say anything, then you hate people. Then you're cruel. There is a right and wrong. There is a truth. And it's not in Dr. Rachel Levine, whoever. It's not with these people either. Secular Democrats of America, seculardems.org, want a pluralistic society. Our Constitution has nothing to do with pluralism. It has to do with the rights of religion. But They want more than that. They love abortion. They love LGBTQ plus rights and everything. They're for equity. Go and learn about them. The Biden regime lives by them. This man doesn't, and you gotta love him. Florida governor signs new bill requiring K through 12 public schools to hold moment of silence each day. I'm sure the ACLU will jump all over this for no reason. I'm sure secular Dems of America will jump all over it. Well, anybody can do whatever they, whatever they want during that moment. But they'll say its meaning is for prayer, and they'll jump all over it. But anyway, God bless you, Governor. God bless you. This just kind of a fact in Georgia's Fulton County under state investigation for allegedly violating ballot drop box form rules. They don't have transfer forms for some of the ballot drop boxes, so see where that goes. The libs are going crazy over one of their favorite justices. Libs call for justice's retirement, pick up urgency after McConnell's vow. Remember yesterday, McConnell said if the GOP takes back the Senate after the midterms, Biden's not going to ever nominate anyone to the Supreme Court. And so they are wanting this man to resign now so they can get a new lib on the bench. They are so nice. House Republicans demand answers from Biden administration about union special treatment. Yeah, all kinds of things like how come the teachers union got to really help frame CDC recommendations for schools? Let's see, what does it say here? It says House Republicans, and this isn't going to do any good because nobody cares. Not in the administration, not Democrats. House Republicans are raising alarms about former union officials who were granted ethics waivers to serve in the Biden administration, claiming organized labor is having undue influence on government policy. Hey, note to House GOP, Senate GOP, to all GOP. Biden and Harris say they are the most pro-union administration ever. Man, they're all about the union. Top Republicans sent letters Tuesday to the Biden administration demanding answers on some of his political appointees who are former union officials and the circumstances surrounding the exemptions they were granted to federal ethics rules. The union leaders were granted special treatment to both serve in the Biden administration and communicate directly with former union employees to enact policies that could directly benefit the unions. And of course that's happening. They'll never admit it. No, everything we do is right. What do you think, Johnny? Yes, some sad COVID news. COVID-19 deaths top 600,000 in U.S. even as vaccine rollout continues, although deaths are going down. But still, these are not counted as, these are not just deaths from, these are still counted deaths with. The only time the count changes is if you die after being vaccinated, then they will put you in a status of either died from or died with COVID. But now that doesn't count, so we really don't know what the true count is. And we had this about England. Well, it's happening here in the good old U.S. Respiratory syncytial virus cases, RSV, up across the southern U.S., CDC warns. So usually that dies off with cold and flu season in the winter, and also people have a pretty good immune response for most people, but our immunity's been killed because we were all locked in. So anyway, be on the lookout for that. Oh, where do we want to go now? Let's do this, because if not, I don't know if I'll have time, because we're going to get into something special here. Yes, foreign affair time. We have this, which makes 0 sense. Biden, EU, and 17-year Airbus Boeing trade dispute seek to calm relations after Trump. So they end a 17-year Airbus Boeing trade dispute, and somehow they tack it on Trump. 17 years. That goes back 17 years, and they're blaming Trump. We have this from the other day, the designation of Navalny affiliated organizations as extremists. This happened the other day ahead of the Biden-Putin meet, and the State Department jumped on it because Russia's Supreme Court basically said any organization tied with Navalny, who is a Russian dissenter who's in prison, they're now extremists, and the government can act as such. And the State Department said we condemn the decision by a Moscow court to designate as extremists 3 organizations affiliated with imprisoned opposition figure Alexei Navalny. This designation puts staff members, volunteers, and thousands of supporters across Russia at risk of criminal prosecution and imprisonment. We condemn today's decision by a Moscow court. Let's see, we already did that. Designation was an imprisonment for exercising fundamental human rights guaranteed by the Russian Constitution, and it further restricts the ability of opposition candidates to appear on the ballot in the September Duma elections. With this action, Russia has effectively criminalized one of the country's few remaining independent political movements. Oh, of course, this was done when? June 29th. Again, the meeting with Putin was already set up then. And of course, you know, what did we hear Biden do yesterday? He just completely marginalized the Republican Party. And you know, on foreign soil. Depends on where you're from. Some it's soil, some it's soil. And so we complain about what we do. Yeah, but anyway, and that's bad. That's tough. And we have this be a moment of levity before we get into some very serious and very scary stuff. If I can get everything to work. Thank you. All right. I really didn't have time to get a better picture of this handbag, but there you see it. Looks like a little clutch. I know that. I used to sell women's shoes and purses. If I can get it to go small now. All right. So you see what Dr. Jill is carrying there. Jill Biden carried this bag while meeting the Queen of England, and it's somehow still in stock. This purse should have sold out, ladies and gentlemen, because of fashion plate Dr. Jill. Should we do the board? Yeah, let's do all this. Get it out of the way. Actually, it is Taco Tuesday, and some tacos sound good. Who's not making a run for the border? This woman, Kamala Harris. Harris again snaps during interview when asked about visiting the border amid migrant crisis. This is a few days old. After she got back, she was once again asked about that. She just doesn't like to hear about that. Biden admin officials perplexed at Harris's performance during Central America trip. They were not happy at all with her, which, why would you be? Well, just having some problems here. Biden administration officials are quietly perplexed, not anymore, about Vice President Kamala Harris's fumbling multiple questions about the border and are concerned her unforced errors will overshadow her first international trip, according to a report. And guess what? They did, didn't they? Speaking to CNN, administration officials discussed how the question of visiting the border dogged Harris for the whole trip. Her answer to NBC News' Lester Holt, stealing the spotlight from her work. At some point, we are going to the border, a defense of Harris told Holt on Today in Guatemala, 1,308 miles away from the U.S.-Mexico crossing. We've been to the border, so this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border, Harris said, to which Holt replied, you haven't been to the border. Oh, but she had, just not that border. So they are very upset with that.
But it's a mess, ain't it, Sheriff?
If it ain't, it'll do till the mess gets here.
They feel just like Tommy Lee. Of course, it's also Harris's need to laugh. And she knew Holt and everybody else was talking about the Texas-Mexico border, not San Diego. Come on. But anyway, they were upset about that. What else do we have? This and all of this is from last week, trying to clean up some things. Governor Reynolds, feds flew migrant children to Des Moines without notifying Iowa. Yeah, it's federal, so I don't guess they have to, but these governors are not happy. Why? Because they have to pay for them. End up having to school them and everything else. U.S. launches new efforts to stem corruption and smuggling in the Northern Triangle. That, Harris did that. Give her some credit. She did something. Vice President Kamala Harris's visit to Guatemala and Mexico ended with the promise to create groups to combat corruption in the Northern Triangle and to renew efforts against human trafficking and human smuggling organizations. U.S. will send prosecutors to work with regional attorneys and to investigate and pursue cases with American links. The aim is to decrease migration in the long term by fostering better governance and accountability. Various U.S. agencies are also set to provide $48 million to develop housing and agribusiness devastated by recent hurricanes in Guatemala and to support the country's entrepreneurs, especially young women in regions of high immigration, especially them. Even though the largest category of people trying to enter the southern border are single males. A bilateral plan with Mexico also promises to establish an FBI partnership to help, to help solve over 82,000 cases of people who are missing or forcibly disappeared in that country. Now, some of them probably over here, but yeah, our tax dollars hard at work. Mexican and U.S. law enforcement will also increase collaboration against smugglers and improve the exchange of information to combat transitional criminal organizations that are responsible for homicides and drug-related deaths on both sides of the border. I'm all for that. Harris drew criticism in the U.S. for traveling to the countries that people immigrate from before she visited the border where unaccompanied minors are still arriving and being held. That's right. Let's go ahead because we're not going to have any fun in a minute, so let's have all the fun we can now. That's right.
I got unaccompanied minors!
Is this some kind of prison?
Yes, little girl, it is. Politicians like Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spoke out against the vice president's "do not come" message aimed at Central Americans, which the administration has sent through its embassies as well. The message, AOC tweeted, seemingly ignores that seeking asylum in the U.S. is legal and that many do so because of instability fostered by past American governments that supported restrictive regimes ousted in civil wars. Yeah, so that, ladies and gentlemen, catches you up on the border. Although I haven't had time for it, the border judges, there's only about 500 immigration judges who are appointed by each administration, in this case regime. They're not on the bench for life. So they're saying they feel the pressure to deport people and not to really listen because they don't want to lose their jobs. Stand up and be men and women anyway. Do what you think is right. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, we can't take them all. And there's just not. See, there are so many issues, ladies and gentlemen. There are so many things. If we gave an hour to every issue, we just the messed up. You know, this regime talks about combating corruption all over the globe, and yet they are corrupt just in their hiring. And like the notice we had about hiring union officials, ex-lobbyists. You know, the corruption of giving their ex-campaign aide. The company he works for, that big multi-million-dollar no-bid contract to take care of the people they're letting in. You know, the corruption just stinks to high heaven. And it hadn't even been 200 days yet. Now we're going to get to something that was started on day one of the Biden regime. What happened to you? Come back. And we are going to spend some time on it, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we kind of rush through everything else. And so we have a good amount of time to spend on it. This is scary. This scares me. Not because I am one of the ones that should be investigated, but as we finish here, you will see if you're someone like me or someone who just has certain political views, you're probably going to be investigated. If you're a white church, a conservative white church that involves politics in your worship, which I don't always like, I don't think church is the place for that, but it's also not a place to exclude it because it's part of life, part of a reason we call upon God. The state of our country, the state of affairs that we're in, and the evil of different governmental policies, and even those that impose them upon us. We need to be able to speak out against that. Well, just like, we'll just start with this, or I'll start talking all about it, and no need to show you all my cool slides. So, statement by President Joseph R. Biden Jr. on the national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. Now, you would think this could be a good thing, but no. Domestic terrorism driven by hate, bigotry, excuse me, and other forms of extremism is a stain on the soul of America. It goes against everything. I'm sorry, this is going to be tough. It goes against everything our country strives for, and it poses a direct challenge to our national security, democracy, and unity. I have never heard an administration use the word democratic principle, the words, phrases, and democracy as much as this one. And they are so anti-democratic. They are anti-democracy. And so much so that it's scary. Probably the most anti-democratic regime we've ever had. And yet they promote that. And that's what these type of people do. That they shroud themselves in what they're trying to tear apart. To meet this serious and growing threat, on my first day in office, I directed my national security team to confront the rise in domestic terrorism with the necessary resources and resolve. Today I am releasing the first ever national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. It lays out a comprehensive approach to protecting our nation from domestic terrorism while safeguarding our bedrock civil rights and civil liberties, values that make us who we are as Americans. We have to take both short-term steps to counter the very real threats for today and longer-term measures to diminish the drivers that will contribute to the ongoing challenge of our democracy. As I said the other day, there is no challenge to our democracy. The only challenge to our democracy, I guess I said it yesterday, is taking place in universities and schools and in the halls of government, in voting precincts, in the media. It's not your average people. Yeah, there's a few crazies out here, but it's not like this. This is a project that should unite all Americans. Together we must affirm that domestic terrorism has no place in our society. We must work to root out the hatred that can too often drive violence, and we must recommit to defending and protecting our basic freedoms, which belong to all Americans in equal measure, not equitable measures here, and which are not only the foundation of our democracy, they are our enduring advantage in the world. Well, these are a few. You can go to whitehouse.gov, go to Daily Briefing, and you can see the fact sheet on this and also read the background call on it with journalists. We just don't have time to go into it. We've got some good clips coming from Merrick Garland, the regime's attorney in general that doesn't care too much for the Constitution. And we're going to have some highlights of it from him just a moment. But these are a few things I thought we should look at, a few paragraphs of the fact sheet. Under federal law, domestic terrorism is defined as activities that involve acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state, appear to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, and occur primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Now, right off, what groups come to your mind that are active within the borders of the United States that would fit this description? I'm talking groups, not individuals. I can tell you two. One is Antifa, whatever you want to call them. That they fit that. And the other is Black Lives Matter. What are they doing when they burn businesses and people have to fight them off? What are they doing when they go to restaurants and start walking through and trying to get white people to get up and get out, and, well, all the patrons, and attack white people and intimidate them? Well, that fits this definition, doesn't it? But no. They are nowhere to be seen in this, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, no Muslim groups. No, nothing like that. Guess what? No environmental terrorists, because they all have just causes. See, that's the thing. If you have a just cause, but if you're white, there's not one, unless you're marching with these people, there's not one cause you can have that's just. Because to them, the government is unapproachable. The government is unassailable. The government's always right. And people who are marching to protect their so-called basic civil and now equitable rights, well, they're just doing that because their cause is just. If you think the election's been stolen and they won't even do proper recounts, and you go out and protest, and again, I in no way think those idiots should have gone in and rushed the Capitol. I also think the Capitol shouldn't have been blocked off. They should have been able to go, if they behaved themselves, into the Senate and House galleries. There should have been counts on the vote. These were not just people saying, oh, Trump lost and we want him in. People with legitimate questions on the election. And yeah, you had some crazy people. And unfortunately, a lot of people got hurt. Some people died. We still don't have any good answers on the woman that was shot and killed by Capitol Police. But ladies and gentlemen, that was an exception. That is not the rule of our life. But they are saying this is the rule, and they are going to expand this. Never trust a government that says, hey, we're going to work to make you safer. While they've got the border wide open, they want more immigrants to come in. And see, just saying that makes me sound like I'm a white supremacist, racist person who thinks all these immigrants coming in, they're going to cause harm. How many criminals? What did we show? Was criminal apprehensions at the border is up over 700%. I need to find that town. I keep forgetting to look it up. A town in Tennessee and places in Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis, where Somalis have come in and set up their gangs and people are scared to death. But no, we're the trouble. We're the trouble. When's the last time a group of angry white men went and burned down a city? No, but some marched on the Capitol, a one-time event, and it wasn't to take over the government. But again, saying all this makes me a government target, even though they say I have the right to free speech. But if you talk a certain way, they're going to start monitoring you. Just like they sent agents into mosques, they're going to be sending agents into churches. You just hang on. They're going to be sending agents into Republican gatherings. This is an all-out assault under the guise of we have to protect the nation. Just saying. The review was rooted in an expert assessment of the domestic terrorism threat by Biden's experts, provided by the intelligence and law enforcement communities. An unclassified summary of that assessment was released in March so the public could see the key findings. It found the two most lethal elements of today's domestic terrorism threat are racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists who advocate for the superiority of the white race, and anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists such as militia violent extremists. Militia-based violent extremists, however. They're the only, I'm not going to say we, because I'm not one of those. But that's the only ones. Throughout the process, we embrace the protection of civil rights and civil liberties as a national security imperative. The strategy we are releasing today is carefully tailored to address violence and reduce the factors that lead to violence, threaten public safety, and infringe on the free expression of ideas. It is organized around 4 pillars. The core elements of how the Biden administration will improve the U.S. government's response to this persistent, evolving, and lethal threat to our people, our democracy, and our national security. And you can go on and read the 4 pillars. Again, whitehouse.gov will give you all of that. Now today, their Attorney General, Merrick Garland, announced to the various agencies at the Justice Department what they're going to do, made a speech about it. At the end, got a standing ovation as he walked down and everything, and treated like, oh, this is so great. And this is scary. Now again, the only ones really being separated out are people who are white who object. And again, there's some bad people under the title white supremacists, and they do need to be dealt with if they're being violent and hurting people. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's the only people, if that is the greatest threat, and remember, it's not white supremacy as we think, it's white supremacy as they have decided. Because to them, everyone on the Capitol grounds, everyone that voted for Trump, everyone, as Joseph R. Biden Jr. said yesterday in Europe, talking about the horrible state of the Republican Party and how if you supported Trump, you're a problem. You're bad. You're bad for the country. Because that's populism. And you're probably white. And you probably wanted to overthrow the government. This is bad. And this is how bad things start happening in the government. You know, they accuse Trump of all this. Well, if Trump had done everything they said, he would still be in power. No, the assault on democracy has begun before the election. And it's stepping up today. And they will use this during the next elections. Trust me. You're going to have to watch it. All right, Merrick Garland. We're starting with the introduction to it, just the overall, okay, this is what's going on.
I'm pleased to announce that the administration is today releasing the first national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. Each of your components will play an important role in ensuring its success. The national strategy is designed to coordinate and provide a principled path for the federal government's efforts to counter the heightened domestic terrorism threat using all available tools. It is the culmination of an effort undertaken at the President's direction by federal agencies all across the government, from the Justice Department to the Departments of Homeland Security, Defense, State, Health and Human Services, and others. As part of this effort, our law enforcement and intelligence agencies examined the evolving threat that faces us today. From that base of understanding, we developed this national strategy to guide the work of a broad set of federal actors. At the Justice Department.
So it's not just the Justice Department, it's not just Homeland Security. It's not just various intelligence agencies. The Pentagon, as you know, as you might remember or recall, or maybe you don't, you know, they did a stand down while they investigated and make sure there weren't any white supremacists serving. And they're talking about doing better at letting people in, giving them different tests, and same for hiring government employees, because this is an all-of-government approach. This is an all-of-government approach. HHS. You know, if you fall under a certain category, there may come a time. And again, you might think, oh, Danny, you're going overboard. These are just scary people we've got to get to. Where's the threat? Where are they marching at? What are they doing? It happened on January 6th. Yeah, there's always some person doing something. There's always been people meeting that think, oh yeah, we need to, we're white and we don't want anybody but white people here. But where's this horrible threat? You notice we really don't have any other threats. We have competition with China. Putin's a threat to some extent. They say that. But in this country, the only ones that are really threats to democracy, to our very nation's safety, in their minds are Trump supporters who still think he won the election. And if you could get them to be honest, they would say this is who this is targeted against, only they put it all under the cloud of white supremacists. You know, they've been trying to put that label on Trump since he was running the first time. But all of government, can you imagine one day you can't get housing? You can't get medical treatment? You can't get different help through the government agencies because you're listed? They're talking about putting people that they're watching on no-fly lists and everything else. And again, if you are a truly violent person, okay. This is... All of government is going to be looking for you if you do not talk and act right, even though they say we're not crossing that line. Oh, yeah.
Among other things, we have begun to reinvigorate the Domestic Terrorism Executive Committee, and we will convene that interagency body in the coming days and months. Attorney General Janet Reno originally created the Executive Committee in the aftermath of the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. The investigation of that bombing, which required an enormous commitment of resources from agencies across the federal and state governments, had demonstrated the importance of such a coordination mechanism. Our current effort comes on the heels of another large and heinous attack, this time the January 6th assault on our nation's capital. We have now, as we have then, an enormous task ahead.
Timothy McVeigh and his accomplice's name escapes me. They worked alone as much as anybody could tell. Much of the reason that they bombed that bit, which was horrible, and no sympathy toward them. Understand? And you have to be careful, because if you say certain things, so you were for... No. They were upset about, and they handled it in the very wrong way, upset about what the government did at Ruby Ridge and what they did in Waco with the Branch Davidians. That was some of their main drivers. It's when the government was going after violent extremists. And or Branch Davidians, they have some strange things going on. Maybe. We'll never know. Ruby Ridge was a total disaster. You'll have to look it up. And the bombing of Oklahoma City was horrible. And so they instituted a council to go over these things. Well, they shut it down because, there's no widespread movement of extremism, etc. But we're going to get it going back up because of January 6th, which they say was to take over the government, to overthrow the government, which there was no way to even do that. The people wanted a true count. They wanted the government to function correctly and not cover up things that everybody knew at least looked wrong. Things we'd never seen in American national politics. And all they had to do is, Ted Cruz said, give us 10 days. What's the hurry? And no, the people shouldn't have stormed, but ladies and gentlemen, this is not the problem they're making it out to. As Rahm Emanuel, remember him from the Obama days, former Chicago mayor. As Rahm Emanuel said, never waste a good crisis. They're not. And they're coming after more than what they're letting on about.
Unfortunately, we know from experience that domestic terrorism and violent extremism comes in many forms. 6 years ago, 9 black men and women were shot and killed while praying at their church in Charleston. 4 years ago, this week, an attacker shot 4 people at a congressional baseball practice after confirming that the players were Republicans. 2 months later, a man drove his car into a crowd of peaceful protesters against white supremacism in Charlottesville, murdering 1 and injuring many more. In 2018, 11 Jewish worshipers were shot and killed at their synagogue in Pittsburgh, and 2 summers ago, 23 people, most of whom were Latino, were gunned down while shopping at a Walmart in El Paso. Such a
Now then, all of those actions listed are horrible, wrong, and every living violator should be punished to the full extent of the law. But if you have kept up with events, then you notice that every action listed was carried out by a person of Caucasian descent. We're the only ones. And not one of these have been tied to a group. It's just murderous individuals with deep internal problems and messed up minds, and they're living a wrong life. Yeah, get them. But you know what? There's not this great network that they think that there is. And they're all, it's all they're talking about is white people. And again, if you keep talking like that, then you're going to be counted as one of the extremists. Like, if you point out things like this: multi-state shooting spree was racially motivated, suspect was targeting white men. Well, that's just one black person, and he has reasons because of all the horrible things we've done. And to be honest, white people have done, some horrible things. Not excusing actions at all. I'm not for lawlessness. I'm not for murder. I'm not for beating people up. I don't understand beating up people of different colors. I don't understand beating up someone because they're of a different sexuality. I don't understand men beating up women. I don't understand adults beating kids. I don't understand any of that. It's wrong. I don't understand killing people because they're different from you and pose no harm or threat. Something's wrong with that, obviously. But that does not mean that everyone that has a differing opinion is a domestic terrorist, which they point out. But who are they going to target? You got to think. And of course, it all becomes a big conspiracy theory if you don't just say, oh yeah, no, it's there. Then something's wrong with you.
The number of open FBI domestic terrorism investigations this year has increased significantly. According to an unclassified summary of the March intelligence assessment, the 2 most lethal elements of the domestic violence extremist threat are racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and militia violent extremists. In the FBI's view, the top domestic violent extremist threat comes from racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically those who advocated for the superiority of the white race.
In the FBI's view, not proof shows, that's the biggest threat. That's just how we're viewing it. Just, again, get these people. But this is a little over the top, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care if you're black or brown or what. I'm not just... I have friends of all colors. I've got grandkids that are mixed race. I love them. I cherish them. Grew up, my best friend, me and my brother are best friends down the block. We're Mexican. I've known black people that and I know that I care deeply about. I love them. They're I don't know that many Asians, forgive me. 2 of my favorite people, we were in Florida a while last summer, and we were in the Pensacola area, and 2 of my favorite people to talk to every day, I look for them. 2 black men, one older than me, one younger than me. got to know them, shared things of our lives together. It's not about that. We can't just say, oh, we can't put everything in a box. There's things about being black I don't understand. There's things about white they don't understand. And when we try to put it all together, how do you get past that? We get to know each other. The threats to our nation are found right now in the Democratic Party, in liberalism, in what they call wokeness, rewriting history, equity. These things are what's tearing us apart. These things are what's causing the problems. More property has been burnt and destroyed in this country the last couple of years, protesting whites. But no, we can't mention that, can we? All right, one more.
With our international partners. Our third principle is that we build upon and learn from the past. A look at our past efforts to combat terrorism teaches valuable lessons about what can go right and what can go wrong. It should also give us hope about our ability to rise and adapt to the challenge. I'm personally struck by three events that occurred not far from each other at different points in the last 100 years. When I visited the Greenwood district in April of this year, where Black Wall Street once thrived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was struck by the failure to do justice after the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. Over 1,250 homes were burned down. Some 10,000 people were left homeless. Businesses, schools, houses of worship, and 35 city blocks were destroyed. The number of people killed is estimated in the hundreds. All that destruction and death, and not a single person was prosecuted for it. Almost 75 years later, just over 100 miles southwest of Tulsa in Oklahoma City, after an attack that resulted in the deaths of 168 people, the Justice Department successfully apprehended, prosecuted, and convicted the men responsible for the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building. And 5 years ago, across Oklahoma's northern border in Kansas, federal authorities disrupted a plot to bomb an apartment complex and its mosque and to kill its residents, immigrants from Somalia. Working with Joint Terrorism Task Force partners, the government prevented the bombing. No one died, and those who sought to commit it were convicted of their crimes.
And I'm glad they stopped that attack. I thought, it's horrible what happened in Tulsa 100 years ago. But we can't make up for that. As far as I know, I've never read where Timothy McVeigh or his partner were killing people because they were of a color. They were attacking the federal government. Unfortunately, they did it when even little children were in the daycare there. And it's unfortunate that they attacked the government like that. To understand what I'm saying. They weren't white supremacists, as far as I know. Maybe they were, but that wasn't the reason for their attack. They specifically targeted that building because it was also where the IRS in that region was officed. But again, only white crimes. Only the work of white people is being targeted. And that's because they have an agenda. And if you don't fit the mold of a white liberal that is upset over your racial makeup, and especially if you're a conservative, or I guess I should say a Trump-leaning Republican that wants America first, wants the Constitution followed. One of the things they point out, people who feel that the government's not following the Constitution. If you feel that way and you're white, you're under their radar. Of course, just talking about it and just speaking out of hate will not get them to investigate you and follow you, only if you become violent. But he's already talking about preventing things. See, it's going to cross over. They just say that. But of course, we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully they do save lives. But I'm not so sure. We have this. I've had this for a few weeks now, it feels like. The DHS started already. Department of Homeland Security stands up domestic terror intelligence team. The Biden administration is placing a new focus on domestic extremism, but advocates of those previously caught in the crosshairs aren't sold. Well, why would you be? I mean, this is bad. When President Joe Biden addressed Congress last month, so this was in March, he said that while white supremacist terrorism, or in April, the great threat to the U.S. Now, as the White House prepares to release its report on domestic terrorism, the Department of Homeland Security is also continuing to shift its focus to domestic threats, not the border. The Department of Homeland Security's intelligence arm is setting up a dedicated team to focus on domestic terrorism, two DHS officials told Politico. The team will have several full-time personnel. DHS is also renaming and refocusing a separate office that has drawn criticism for its prior work fighting extremism. The move comes as the department is increasing its focus on domestic terrorism and violent threats. And I can tell you why they're doing this, ladies and gentlemen. It's because January 6th scared them, and they don't want to get caught in anything again. You can draw your own conclusions. DHS is grappling with the growing threat of domestic terrorism, particularly attacks perpetrated by white supremacists. The Biden regime and DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas have made countering the threat a top priority and launched an internal review scrutinizing domestic extremism in the department's ranks. Earlier this year, DHS sent out its first ever National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin about domestic terrorism, but addressing the threat presents complex challenges, and groups represented American Muslims and others focused on civil rights aren't yet convinced the department will get it right. See, they know, they're afraid of it. Those communities have long raised concerns about what DHS calls countering violent extremism, or CVE. Since the Obama administration, those efforts have been housed under a number of different monikers at DHS, but their focus on extremism within the American Muslim community drew condemnation as discriminatory and stigmatizing spying efforts. You know, I don't even think we should have a DHS. I'm sorry. I've never thought. I did not like it when they started it, because everyone saw that had any sense of potential for what they can be. Most recently, DHS's Office of Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention tried to combat white supremacist terrorism during the Trump administration, but officials previously told Politico that they won scant buy-in from the White House and struggled to significantly improve these efforts. Despite that, incoming Biden officials have praised the office's works In remarks submitted to Congress for a March hearing, John Cohen, DHS's top counter-terror official, said the office is DHS's key node for the work to prevent terror attacks. On the campaign trail, Biden promised to eliminate the office as part of efforts to partner with the Arab American community. These new changes, which DHS will describe as a replacement for the previous office, point to an effort to prevent violent attacks. The newly named Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships will focus on partnering with community organizations, civil society groups, law enforcement, and other groups to expand community-based violence prevention programs, the official said. Its leaders also plan to work with the tech industry and outside academics to assess which online narratives may be most likely to incite violence. And that's another thing this new program does across government. They're going to be focusing on social media and trying to track you. Well, how do they do that but go by what you're saying? And it doesn't mean you have to come out and say, I want to kill people of whatever race. You can just be talking a certain way and they'll start monitoring you. They say they're watching out for freedom of speech. You can't do that when you're monitoring people. And again, I'm not even for saying, why do you hate a race? That's stupid. Why do you hate anybody? All right, and according to the officials, it will try to gauge the threat people may pose based on behavioral assessments rather than ideology. Well, that's not going to happen. In other words, the officials told Politico the days of CVE are over. It always gets back to ideology. It just depends on which ideology you give a pass at the time. These efforts face skepticism. Harsha Panduranga of the Brenham Center for Justice said efforts to predict the threats people pose based on their behavior could cast a net that is way too wide. A lot of these characteristics that we're talking about are shared by millions and millions of Americans. Social isolation, having a grievance, whatever that means, he told Politico. It really could capture broad swaths of the U.S. population. Yes, it can. That's my whole point. This is dangerous. If you're going to focus on these supposed risk factors and trying to reduce these risk factors to violence, what you're really talking about is remedying broader social issues, he said. And law enforcement involvement in that and any intelligence sharing in that context could undermine the goals of what you're trying to do. Hussam Alouche, the head of the Council on American Islamic Relations, Los Angeles, also said he didn't see the announcement as particularly encouraging. I'm tired of seeing our community being used as some test ground for new programs as a guinea pig for one surveillance program or after the other, he said. I'm going to withhold judgment on the specifics of this program because I obviously haven't seen it. What I'm saying is it would be an understatement to say that as a civil rights organization and leader myself that I'm skeptical. The DHS officials said that they share community leaders' concerns and hope to repair those relationships by abandoning the prior ideology-focused approaches. Meanwhile, Abed Ayub, the legal and policy director of the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, told Politico that he participated in meetings between community groups and DHS officials about the changes. I'm trying to get that straight. They've done a much better job than the prior administration at listening to community concerns, and so far they've done a better job than the Obama administration at listening to our concerns. We are cautiously optimistic. We have to give them a chance to see how this plays out, and if we need to hold them accountable, we'll hold them accountable. All right, so there you have that. But again, right now, the Arab community, the Muslim community is not their target. And they're all correct. How do you just cut off ideology? All right, get through this quickly, and then we'll be done. Some inside information. The team, the regime's team, press people and security people, they were told not to do a joint press conference with Putin by the ones that direct them due to Biden's ability to make gaffes, penchant for gaffes, because of his slowness, and that he just couldn't call on selected reporters. So that's why there is no joint press conference going to be held with Putin. They didn't want him upstage. Biden has been laughed at quite a bit. Many leaders have been shaking their heads at his ideas and his slowness at times. So not good, even though they won't talk about that. They are looking forward, the team is looking forward to ending the trip and wish they had never given in to the summit with Putin, but Biden did an end around on that, and so that's what's going on behind the scenes. And believe me, there's things going on behind the scenes right now. They've already been doing this. You're going to be monitored if you go to a Trump political rally or anything like that. Get used to it. You're going to have to make your voices be heard on this. We're going to have to keep after them for more clarification. Go to whitehouse.gov, the daily briefing section, and read the background information. Hey, pray, make your voices heard. God bless America. Pray for one another. If you'd like to support our little show, you can Venmo any contribution to Danny-Thompson-02380. God bless you. God bless America. Thanks for watching. We went a little long, but a lot to get to. We'll see you tomorrow. And again, thank you for watching, and please share. Goodbye.